The cross stands at the very heart of Christianity. It has come to symbolize Christianity the world over. We put crosses in front of our churches, crosses on top of our churches. We wear jewelry in shape of crosses, and crosses form the cover art for many editions of the Bible. It is the one symbol that has come to mean Christianity throughout the world. In some areas, Muslims even refuse to have a branch of the Red Cross, preferring instead to have their own Red Crescent organizations, since the cross is closely associated with Christianity. In popular thought, the shape of the cross is so closely tied to Christianity that in myth and fable it can be used as a ward against evil. For Christians, the cross not only stands at the very center of what we believe, it also stands at the very center of history. And yet, in all of this, have we lost what the cross really stood for? The cross was one of the cruelest forms of death and torture available to the Romans. In our modern world, where prisoners have rights and the death is used as a punishment, we are meant to make every effort to make it as quick and painless as possible. It is easy to forget that crucifixion was not just a method of killing people, but that it was also a method designed to do it as painfully as possible. The victims were left hanging on the cross naked, often for days, to linger in agony before their body simply has no strength left and death followed. It is possible to run through the gruesome details of how the crucifixion worked, why it's so painful and so long, but we're not going to do that. You see, there is another side to the crucifixion. It was also designed to be public, humiliating, degrading, and offensive. Crucifixion was not just a way of dealing with criminals, it was a way of holding down revolutionaries. A way to show how completely disgraceful they were, and that in the end they were miserable failures. It is very hard to keep your dignity when you are nailed to a cross naked, in agony, and left to die a lingering death, in full view of everyone, and there is nothing you can do to resist it. Worse, in Jewish culture, it was considered to be a curse by God to die in such a way. And yet, this is the way that God chooses to reveal His ultimate glory. By taking this suffering, humiliation, and curse upon Himself. It was the reason He became human to go to the cross. We read about Jesus going to be glorified. But in the context in which Jesus was talking, it refers to the place He is going that Peter cannot yet follow, but will later, the cross. The cross is where we find the ultimate display of God's glory. This place of humility and shame is the place where God reveals Himself most fully. It is in the cross that we gain a full understanding of who Jesus is, and so who God is. In the Gospel of John, we are told of signs that will serve to reveal Jesus' glory. The first is the water into wine. The second is the healing of the nobleman's son. Third is the healing of a paralyzed man at the pool. Fourth, the feeding of the 5,000. Fifth is the healing of the man born blind. 6 is the raising of Lazarus from the dead. And now we come to the final one, the 7th, the crucifixion. John has repeatedly told us that when Jesus is lifted up, it will then be the moment of God's glory shining through him at full strength. At the moment when Jesus is humiliated and seemingly the most out of control, a failure, most human, is when he reveals God's glory. Yes, the cross had to be endured, but surely the great miracles, or the transfiguration, or the resurrection, or the ascension, that would be where the glory of God would be shown. Now, why is it on the cross that God's glory is shown? Because it is the cross more than any other of these events, even the resurrection, that shows who God is, that tells us what God is like. The key is perhaps found in John 13:1. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. In Greek, it literally means he loved them to the very end, which is true, but it also carries this meaning of loving to the utmost, of showing him the end or the depth of his love. This is God showing how far he was prepared to go to love humanity. This was the cross as a demonstration of God's love. Now, I'm not saying that that was all it was. That somehow if we can just see how much God loves us, then it inspires us to live better lives, and that is all there is to do about the cross. No, there is much, much more going on here. The cross was part of God's way of dealing with sin objectively. It was about facing the reality and consequences of sin and dealing with them. Along with the incarnation, the life and ministry of Jesus, his resurrection and ascension, it was dealing with humanity's problems. But as the lowest, most painful and degrading part of the process, it was also a demonstration of God's love. That he would do whatever it took, no matter the cost, to achieve our redemption. He showed us the full extension of his love by going all the way to the end for us. This is what it meant by the revelation of God's glory, that Jesus stayed on the cross for us. It is ironic that Jesus demonstrates the full glory of God in his ultimate identification with sinful man. And suffering our death in our place and taking on the full weight of our sins, his alienation, the guilt, the shame. It is in this identification that he shows with glory of God, because it demonstrates his love. That he would be willing to do this for us. It also brings us one of the most challenging statements of the Bible. John 13:34. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. The commandment to love was not new, but to love as Jesus, as God loved, that was new. A love that was offered friendship even when it knew it was going to be betrayed. A love that would sacrifice everything to identify with the one to be loved. A love to the end. A love to the utmost. A love that would display the ultimate glory of God. That is the love we are called to love with. Impossible? Yes. But part of the reason for the crucifixion was to make it possible. To allow God to dwell within, that we might love as He loved. May you grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.